Hi.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari 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 Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari 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 Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana 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 Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada 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 Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Shri Shri Radha Radhanath ki Shri Giraj Govardhan Hari ki Srila Prabhupada ki Shri Gopamanandi. So Hare Krishna everyone. Thank you all for joining us this morning and for the chance to offer the service today as we try to understand Srila Prabhupada's pastimes by his grace and mercy. So we'll begin with our prayers and then into today's chapter for discussion. It's interesting, the date of that this chapter begins is also the 1st of June. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gnan Gna Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nitinamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastrati Deshadarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakapatirubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. Also pray for all your blessings to do justice to this class today. So our reading is actually beginning on the plane to Los Angeles from Hawaii. It's chapter 5 of the Transcendental Diaries, June 1st, 1976. So there's a couple in their early 30s. The gentleman is a preacher and the lady actually bought a Krishna book at some point. And observing Srila Prabhupada and his servant on the plane, they start asking very deep questions, very meaningful questions about spiritual life. And interestingly, the preaching is being done by Harisori Prabhu. And we can only imagine the pressure because Srila Prabhupada is actually listening to him. And then in the end, the tension breaks because the man spoke directly to Srila Prabhupada and complimented that the servant was a fine representative. He's speaking very nicely. And then Prabhupada gave a big smile and said yes, which both relieved and gratified me. I had been feeling somewhat shy and quite unqualified to preach with His Divine Grace sitting right next to me. But he was happy to let me go ahead and was drawing obvious pleasure from hearing his disciples speak. It is something he looks for, because he often says that many young men enthusiastic to preach means that Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement will go on. So this is an important point because in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 4, Text 26, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says that a junior actually shouldn't preach in the presence of a senior. That there's a specific kind of offense called Maryada Vyatikrama. And it has a lot of serious consequences. We're talking about decreasing in your opulence, your knowledge, your duration of life even. Right? But Srila Prabhupada was sacrificing this principle for the higher principle, which is observing the expertise of his disciples. because they would need to carry this mission forward in his absence. So we'll see that this is a theme that will be carried through our chapter today, that sometimes some principles must be sacrificed for other principles that are more essential or important for that time. And it's the spiritual master, the pure devotee, the acharya, that has the acumen to guide us as to which principles can be sacrificed and which principles must be maintained for the benefit of everyone. So eventually, the important thing is that with intelligent application of spiritual principles, Krishna will be pleased and the devotee will advance. But the importance is that there must be spiritual intelligence guiding it. So when the plane landed, there was a very opulent reception. Hundreds of devotees were present, many senior devotees who welcomed Srila Prabhupada. And this is the Vedic standard for an esteemed guest. And also in Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada describes how when Krishna entered Dwarka, how wonderfully all the citizens received him. So just as Hariswari Prabhu had explained to this couple about the importance of serving the spiritual master as a representative of Krishna, and they had been observing how nicely he was serving Srila Prabhupada. In the same way, when we receive the spiritual master like this, it's just like receiving Krishna. Right? So that level of awe and reverence must be there. And it's described very beautifully. As he traveled along moving walkways, Srila Prabhupada appeared like the full moon crossing the night sky, surrounded by an entourage of bright stars, all gathered to pay homage to their Lord and Master. It was the biggest reception LAX had ever seen. So also interestingly is that this temple in Los Angeles that Srila Prabhupada is going to is called New Dwarka. So quite fittingly, the reception was very opulent, and the temple as well. So this, in the next section, the servant notes. Right? Very opulent reception at the temple also, as well as the temple's, the actual temple design and layout, very beautiful. And then he makes an important point. Before we had set off from Bombay in April, he told us that from a managerial point of view, there was no need for him to come to the West, that is Srila Prabhupada. His disciples were very competently taking care of everything. But still he was coming simply to enthuse the devotees, to give them strength, and provide further impetus so that the preaching might continue to increase. His arrival tonight more than justified the effort of traveling so far. After this reception, he was radiant and well satisfied to see the enthusiasm of his devotees. So it's very interesting. Management is not difficult. It doesn't require the pure devotee. But keeping us enthused in spiritual life, right, keeping us progressing and moving forward, that requires the association and the guidance and the instructions. And when that is happening nicely, then the management and all the other elements will fall into place. So the next day, June 2nd, 1976, Hariswari Prabhu starts off by describing the layout of Prabhupada's quarters. And I thought something that's nice that many of us may not know, that the walls were painted in Prabhupada's favorite color combination of pale blue and white with gold trim. And I was thinking about the TOVP. That's probably the inspiration behind that. Very beautiful color combinations. So then Srila Prabhupada went for his morning walk. And generally the men were present on that, but he made time even for the women and children. He would pass out the prasadam, cookies afterwards, after class, and they had that opportunity to reciprocate with him. Then Srila Prabhupada later in the afternoon met with Radha Vallabh Prabhu and Rameshwar Swami. Prabhupada questioned them about the expensive alterations to the deity altars. So there is opulence, but there's opulence that's what can we say? There's opulence that must be applied with some intelligence. The tops of the deity thrones were cloth covered the last time he visited, but now they are gold leafed. Prabhupada told him he does not regard this as an improvement. He said that they now have the look of cheaply painted wood. Why didn't you ask me first before making this change? He quoted a Bengali saying, "You must do something new. If you have to put your feet upward and head down and walk on your hands and clap your feet, but do something new." He shook his head in slight exasperation. This is your American disease, always changing. Change every few minutes. Our qualification is that we don't change anything. he quoted Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, text 2. The supreme science was thus received in disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. But in course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to be lost. This changing will ruin everything, he told them. So this is a very solemn point that he's making, because we have this tendency to believe that if we tweak something or adjust something, it'll be better than the way it was before. Right? And that may apply to a lot of things in material life, but in spiritual life it's not so straightforward. Because again, this point about spiritual intelligence, we need to have that in significant quantities in order to make these changes, or to know how to apply these changes. Because there is a necessity in some way to adapt the philosophy, right? This Srila Prabhupada also mentions in Srimad Bhagavatam. But that adapting must still preserve the essence. And we shouldn't change things because we feel like it. Because that on our whim, Srila Prabhupada, he uses this word very often, whimsically. Right? Our whim is not in line with what Krishna wants. The teachings are given to us in line with what Krishna wants. You make a change and it's not in line with what Krishna wants. So we have to be careful about it in that way, because what Krishna wants is eventually what's going to liberate us. If we change it to what we want, it's not going to have that effect. That's the point that he wants to make. On top of the fact that it just wastes time and effort. Like he says, because you want to walk differently, you'll walk on your hands with your feet. It's a little bit ridiculous, but he's making a point that we must heed for everyone's benefit, right, in spiritual life. So the next paragraph is actually related to this topic, actually. It's a letter from Gopal Krishna Prabhu at the time, very revered Gopal Krishna Goswami, who was preaching in Russia. And he noted that the people were appreciating the books very much, and they were getting favorable reviews from universities and professors. But the problem was, if the books were to be published in Russian, they didn't want Krishna to be presented as God, but rather as a hero, some maybe historical character or some kind of Marvel character. And Srila Prabhupada initially considered it for the sake that they would at least read or hear Krishna's names. And then he decided that it wasn't a good idea. For the same principle, that the essence would be lost, that the reverence wouldn't be there, and then no one will take Krishna's teaching seriously. And that's a problem as well, even in the traditional Hindu or Sanatan culture. To take Krishna as a historical personality means that there's no emphasis on surrendering to him. Why would you surrender to a historical personality or some mythological character, right? And the whole essence of Bhagavad Gita is that it's not just a moral tale, as people would like to think of it as. So there is a similar instance when the decision was being made about the name for our society, when it was International Society for Krishna Consciousness versus International Society for God Consciousness. Yes, you could be a bit popular if you spoke about God consciousness rather than Krishna in particular, but the emphasis on Krishna would be missed. There's nothing wrong with the name God itself, but as Prabhupada explains, it's a secondary name, right? The creator, the most powerful. Krishna is the original name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but all his other names as well, Yashodanandan, Parthasarathi, these are all primary names. These are names that actually, we could say, get Krishna's attention. Like how if I'm sitting here and I'm like, hey guy, how many people are going to know who I'm calling out to? But if I call out your name, you'll know that I'm referring to you. Right? So it's a personal thing. And we need to have that consciousness correct in all matters. The name of the society, how we present the philosophy, of course to ourselves as well. So the next chapter is June 3rd, 1976. This is the morning walk. He answered several philosophical questions, including how the body is maintained during one's sleep, even though the soul actually journeys away from it. This is very interesting. He said sleeping and death are similar. If the body is still fit to be occupied, the soul can return to it. If not, it must go elsewhere. That is death. Pusta Krishna Maharaj pursued the point in the car going back to the temple. Is it actually Krishna who's maintaining the life in the body then? The life of the body is maintained by Krishna or by the individual jiva? Prabhupada answers, no, by Krishna. Everything is Krishna's property. You are thinking it's mine. Kshetra gyam chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. I am the proprietor of this body. That is Krishna. Sorry, that's us. I am the proprietor. But Krishna, he is the proprietor of all the bodies. The landlord, he is the proprietor. You are the occupier. That's all. Rameshwar joined in. Oh, so the Lord in the heart is keeping that body for that jiva, so that when he's finished dreaming, he comes back to it. Yes, Prabhupada replied. He added that it was like keeping a car running with a chauffeur in it. Very interesting. Rameshwar Swami switched topics and asked about independence. He told Srila Prabhupada that Karandar Das, an ex-GBC BBT trustee and president of the Los Angeles temple, has had many confusions and doubts about our philosophy since falling victim to sensual allurements several years ago. These center on what the actual nature of our relationship with Krishna is. According to Karandar, if Krishna is all-knowing, he therefore would know that we are going to misuse our independence and fall down from the path of devotional service. If he knows that, why doesn't he stop us? So it's a doubt that many people might have. Rameshwar paraphrased Karandar's doubt. Krishna knows that I will misuse my independence, but still he gives me independence. Right? And Prabhupada says that's Krishna's mercy. Right? It's not exactly the same as putting a loaded gun in the hand of a child, right? Because we do have some intelligence in order to apply it. And then Prabhupada answers in a very famous example that even though Krishna knows that we may get burnt, or we may be spared from the fire, he doesn't interfere with it. He knows. He's well aware of it. It's our independence to make that choice, and he doesn't interfere. So how do we consider it mercy? Prabhupada continues. So you can actually say that Krishna knows, sorry, it's Pusta Krishna who's asking now. So you actually say that Krishna knows you'll misuse your independence. He knows if you misuse your independence what will happen. But can it actually be said that he knows definitely you will misuse? Okay, so obviously they're struggling a little bit with this point that Krishna is certain. And Prabhupada says, yes. Pusta Krishna nodded. Also, you can use your independence properly, it's up to you. And that's where the mercy comes in. Because if you use your independence properly, that's liberation. That's love of God. But then that limits Krishna, Rameshwar challenged. If you say that Krishna did not know when I will misuse my independence, or if I will, and he stops there, he's trying to say that, does it mean that Krishna doesn't have control, basically? If he knows you'll misuse it, but he doesn't do anything about it, it means that he's literally relinquishing control. It actually does mean that. Right? He may not control it directly, but that, again, that's a feature of his mercy. It's a point we're going to discuss a bit further. I just wanted to highlight it here. But Prabhupada says, no, that means you don't know what is independence. You can change your position at any time, that's your independence. But then Rameshwar says, but Krishna doesn't know if I will do it. So they're struggling a lot with this concept, because we have this idea that if God is the supreme controller, then he should be in control of everything. And if he's not in control of me, does it mean he's any less of a controller? And if he is in control of me, does it mean that I can blame everything on him? Because this is what Karandar is going to come to. He has fallen a few years before, and he basically wants to blame Krishna for it. And that will be explained a bit further on. And in thinking about it, there's this whole concept in quantum mechanics that if there's a particle and you observe it, that immediately changes the course of the particle. it's almost like it must just be left on its own, and you can work out the equations for all the possibilities that it can do, but you can't directly observe it. Right? So Krishna knows all the possibilities that could happen. Like, he knows past, present, and future. And his great love for us basically allows us to be open to all those possibilities without him controlling it. And we'll realize in our discussion that that is actually what true liberty is. There's no meaning to liberation if you don't have the choice right in the beginning that's your own. Shri Shri Radharanath ki, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki, Srila Giraj Govardhan Hari ki, Srila Prabhupada ki. So there's still a finite amount of possibilities that you can exist in, right? Because everyone eventually is limited by your own karma. Not all of us, there could be a possibility that I could become the president tomorrow, but the probability is very low, right? That's my karma. So we're all within a confine anyway, but there's still a lot of possibilities that could happen, and that's the Lord's mercy to allow us to do that, because otherwise there's no meaning to liberty. There's no meaning to becoming liberated. Okay. So then Prabhupada says, yes, because you are independent, Prabhupada told him, that is the meaning. So Rameshwar nodded to show he understood. Marginal, right? So you have independence, but you have it within some limitations. Okay. Prabhupada went further. And the result he knows. Krishna knows the result of what you're going to do. Okay. He knows it. Just as a lawyer knows that he has done this, the criminal, he'll be punished like this. So his position to know the future is always there, either in this condition or other condition. He gave a practical example which made us all smile. Why just Krishna? Everyone knows. Suppose you've got this body, next body is a dog. I can say you'll bark. Okay? So that's a certainty. A dog's going to bark. Right? But there's also the possibility the dog won't bark. Right? So it's not really, we shouldn't think too hard about it basically. Right? There's always the opportunity that we will come to devotional service. It's rare. And most often we're going to misuse the independence because that's what we came to this world for. Right? So the biggest opportunity for us to misuse it is there. But if we get that mercy, then we can change. And Krishna will allow us that. And he understands the outcome either way, whatever choice it is that we make, because he knows past, present, and future. So this is something that we just must accept. The bottom line is that the independence is always ours. So we can see that Krishna could also be applying one principle for another. He's relinquishing his control for the higher principle, that if he gives us our independence, we'll choose to love him. The possibility may be lower than us misusing that independence. But when we use it in the right way, we can trust in our love for him, and he can trust in our love for him, because he hasn't controlled that process at all. It's difficult otherwise. We know a lot of people who doubt God, atheists and stuff. Like, their biggest fear is that we're all going to be spiritual automatons under the control of this, big guy in the sky. Right? It's a little bit scary. And there's no chance of that, because Prabhupada is emphasizing you are independent. Just accept it. All your choices are yours. Because Krishna has absolute power, and there's that line, absolute power corrupts absolutely. But not with Krishna, because he also knows how to apply that power perfectly. That it does not mean that he extends himself into our lives and he controls everything that we do. And that does not happen. And our independence is always preserved. And therefore, when we make the right choices, then we get true liberation, complete freedom. Right? That is always preserved. So we carry on reading. This is Karandar's problem, this point of philosophy. He cannot understand it, Rameshwar told Srila Prabhupada. His argument is that he is having so much trouble due to his sense attraction, and Krishna gave him the sense attraction, or Krishna gave him senses. Now he is having trouble controlling his senses. But he argues that Krishna knows everything, so Krishna knew that he would have trouble controlling his senses. Therefore, why did Krishna give him senses? So Prabhupada answers quite perfectly, that is nonsense. Because it is. It's nonsense. And this is the problem with people who want to blame Krishna for their actions. Right? So we've established already, your independence is there and you just can't do it. And sorry for you. You make your choices. But the bottom line is that the punishment that you get from that is not Krishna saying, you did this, you deserve it. It's reformation. It's an opportunity to improve, to up-level, to be better and work towards liberation. Right? The punishment is always constructive and it's always for our own good. This is something that that gives us a lot of comfort. There's a big difference. Rameshwar brought in another angle, a part of which seemed to be a cycle of negative thinking by which Karandar has concluded that Krishna is at fault for all his problems. He says Krishna is playing games. Again, Prabhupada gave a practical example, simultaneously exposing Karandar's faulty logic and indirectly praising Rameshwar. He said, I've given you charge of this BBT. Millions of dollars you are dealing, but it's not for your misuse. As soon as you misuse, that's your responsibility. Yes, but he says, you'll still know that I'm going to misuse it. Right? So, Krishna knows, again, the point that we've already discussed, Krishna knows that there's a possibility that we're going to misuse the independence. But for the probability that we'll use it in the right way, he still gives us this independence. So there's no chance for Karandar to blame Krishna or to say that Krishna is actually playing games. The Lord knows the chances. He knows the chances. But what the result will be in the end, right? This opportunity for true liberation for us, the opportunity to develop pure love for him, it's worth the chance. So then Prabhupada says, no, that Krishna knows when something charge is given, like when you've given in charge of something, including your own independence. But because you're independent, I know that Rameshwar is a good boy, let him be in charge. You can misuse at any moment. Right? Krishna knows the probabilities. Because you've got independence. You can misuse at any moment. At that time, your position is different. That is Karandar's. He was in this position, but as soon as he misused it, immediately Krishna changed his position. He's so foolish, Rameshwar said. His argument is that I should never have been allowed to misuse my independence. And then the speaker, the author says, then there's no question of independence then. Or for that matter, love. Right? There isn't. Prabhupada agreed. That is not independence. Independence means you can use properly or improperly. He cannot understand that, Rameshwar said. Prabhupada delivered his final analysis. He wants to become a machine. Rameshwar confirmed this. Yes, he'd rather be a machine and be in Krishna's service. Rameshwar brought up several other misunderstandings. Then again he argues like this. He says the living entity cannot do anything without the sanction of God. So I'm desiring certain sinful activities, but why is Krishna sanctioning it? Prabhupada says, Krishna does not sanction. Then the question, then how is it going on? And so we see this Prabhupada is trying to avoid responsibility. Karandar's main problem obviously lay in not understanding that our relationship with Krishna is reciprocal. Right? We do something, Krishna responds. It's not Krishna doing everything, controlling everything, sanctioning everything, making us do everything as he wants. Right? We desire, we misuse, we want, Krishna supplies or agrees. Right? But Prabhupada explains something. So Prabhupada gave another apt instance from his own life to demonstrate this principle. You insist. So Krishna, in disgust, says, all right, do at your own risk, you rascal. You will not hear me. That's it. Right? Prabhupada then says, I've given this example many times, that my son wanted to touch the table fan, right, while it was spinning, when he was only 2 years old. So the table fan was running and the child, he wants to touch it. So I am, no, don't touch. And Prabhupada poked his finger like a mischievous child. So there was another friend, he was a doctor. He said that slow the speed, right? Slow the fan down and let him touch it. So I did it, right? Prabhupada did it. So he touched it and then Prabhupada, he makes the sound, tung. Then I said, Prabhupada to the child, touch again? No. Prabhupada's eyebrows went up like a frightened child, making us all laugh. So it's like that. So another feature of this mercy. So it's actually Krishna's mercy that he allows him to feel the pain, Rameshwar said. And Prabhupada affirmed, yes. He gives instruction, like I said, don't touch, it will hurt your finger, it is not good. The child, like us, no. So all right, touch it, and then you'll feel that pain. So basically, it's not that what we think that, okay, we say many times, not a blade of grass moves without Krishna's sanction, it's true. But whatever soul is in that blade desires to move, right? Or whatever entity is in the wind moves that blade of grass. It's always us, it's always our desire that drives everything in this world. It's being carried out by the three modes of nature. Prakriti kriyamanani, vinaya karmani sarvasaha. But at the end of it all, it's our desire. Right? And because it's our desire, we have to bear the consequence for it. Krishna sanctions it, of course, again, it's within the purview of our karma, the limitations of what we have created for us. But if it is allowed by that, then Krishna sanctions it. But we can't blame him for that when it was our desire. Especially because he's been giving us instructions some time immemorial about how we can use this independence. Right? We had the Vedas right at the beginning, we had Srimad Bhagavatam right at the beginning, we had Bhagavad Gita right at the beginning, we have spiritual teachers all throughout time. We have him within the heart, right, guiding us and giving us instincts, and still we choose to act against it. So we just can't blame Krishna. Then Pusta Krishna said, you mentioned that the more intelligent person can become obedient by hearing what not to do. Again, from scripture, from spiritual personalities. The less intelligent person has to see and suffer. You don't learn the lessons through hearing, you don't learn the lessons by observing someone else, you have to go through it yourself and then you learn. But still it's mercy. Still it's mercy that you undergo this punishment and hopefully you don't do the same thing again. That's the point. So Prabhupada replied, by practical experience, right? Unless he comes to the actual position, he doesn't learn. And therefore, we should become Shastra Chakshush, where you follow through the eyes of Shastra. Then you're safe. Right? Okay. Then Srila Prabhupada, he arrives at the temple for class. And it said that he reciprocated with the enthusiasm of the devotees, because many of them are going out for so many hours, right? They're selling thousands of books, and Prabhupada is conscious that they're making such an effort and that his words can inspire them so much. So he speaks, the verse that he's speaking about is about the Yamadutas, how they went confidently to execute their actions with Ajamil because they were on the order of the Lord. Obviously, we see the parallels between the devotees also going out selling books on the order of Srila Prabhupada. So Srila Prabhupada then said, there is no difficulty to become a devotee. At once you become a devotee within a second. They ask sometimes, how long will it take to become a devotee? And Prabhupada is saying emphatically here, it will take 1 second. Right? How? How is this so? Vasudeva Vokta Karinaha. You just accept whatever Vasudeva says. Right? That's Krishna. You'll do. That's all. Vasudeva says so many things. He says to Arjuna that you fight. So if you accept, yes, I'll fight, then you become a devotee. But Arjuna denied, no Krishna, I'll not fight. And that's our disease. Our disease is that we don't accept what Krishna says immediately without question. And therefore, we're having this difficulty that Krishna consciousness is not coming to us in 1 second. If Prabhupada says it, it must be true. Our whole disease is that as soon as we agree to accept the words of Krishna, we are liberated immediately. We are immediately in the Vaikuntha. As soon as we deny, immediately within Maya. Krishna Bulya Jiva Bhoga Vanshakare, Pashite Maya Tare Japati Adare. 2 things are there, Krishna and Maya. If you deny to keep yourself in the light, then you go in the darkness. And if you deny to keep yourself in the darkness, then go to the light. That's wanted. It's simple. Right? It's very simple. We make it complicated. But it's very difficult to accept the position that I shall do whatever Vasudeva says. Because of the same thing we mentioned in the beginning. We want to tweak everything. We want to make it suit ourselves. We're comfortable in our positions, in our lives, wherever we are in the material world. Right? And that's exactly what's holding us back. We want to adapt the process to us rather than the other way around. Immediately our life becomes very clear and happy. Right? That is if we do whatever Vasudeva says. Not happy in this life, but also in the next life. Right? He surveyed the hundreds of eager faces before him and declared very confidently, our position is like that. Anyone who resists preaching Krishna consciousness, you may protest against Krishna consciousness. We shall smile. That's all. When he said the word smile, he pronounced it so deliberately, with such unshakable self-confidence, that everyone began to cheer and laugh. We know our duty. His words stirred the hearts of the devotees. Many of them responded, Jai. With strength and candor, he said, we shall go on, forward, because we are carrying the order of Krishna. We shall be protected in every respect. No one can supersede our order. This is our position. So this is why he came here. Because we have those doubts, because we've still got one foot in Maya, because we want to change things, because we have so many doubts as represented by Karandar. We need him. We need his words. We need his enthusiasm. We need his faith to keep inspiring us to believe every time we have a tendency to take a step back or to question or to get comfortable back in our old ways and habits. Right? This is what he's here for. Okay. So the point is that those who are preaching Krishna consciousness, if they're following whatever Vasudev said, this point is coming up again, whatever Vasudev's representative has said, just as they have told us, if he's simply prepared to carry out the orders, his position is secure. We're not manufacturing anything imaginary, something imaginary. So our task is very easy because we don't have to manufacture, we don't have to tax our brain, we don't have to create something nonsense. No, our position is very clear. And then he says, quoting Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, always think of me. So we're saying the same thing. Right? My dear friend, my dear student, my dear son, chant Hare Krishna. Then you'll think of Krishna. Manmana. And who will chant Hare Krishna? Madbhakto. Manmana bhava madbhakto. Unless one agrees to become a devotee of Krishna, why he'll chant? Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji. Now you worship me. So we've created this temple. Come on, worship Krishna. And Mam Namaskuru. Whoever comes to the temple, he offers obeisances. Right? Think of Krishna Manmana, Bhava Madbhakto. Become his devotee. Madhyaji, you worship the Lord. And Mam Namaskuru, you offer obeisances. These four things. So some people may question, where's the chanting in here? Now we remember that Krishna was speaking in the Bhagavad Gita at the end of Dwapara Yuga. And there the process was worship. Madhyaji, Mam Namaskuru, offering obeisances. The process now is the same kind of worship, only yagye sankirtane praya jantihi sumedasaha. Now you're worshipping with chanting. It's still the congruent example, just that the Krishna of the time, Kali Yuga, is speaking about the worship in terms of chanting. Right? And His Holiness Parthasarathy Das Goswami made a very nice point that because we're in the junction of the ages, the worship is still carrying on along with the chanting. But as the age progresses, the worship will become less and the chanting will become more till the worship is not even continuing, because we know that worship in many temples is not possible. And it will become less and less the more Kali Yuga progresses. Right? And the chanting will then be the only process of worship. But it is still included in this verse. So then Prabhupada says, where's the difficulty? There is no difficulty. Either you're learned, or a fool, or rich, or poor, or black, or white, or American, or Indian, Hindu, Muslim, never mind. Take this lesson and become perfect. Right? So the human society should take advantage of this movement and do these four things only. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. His voice boomed in the microphone. Then what is the result? Mam evaishasi asamshayaha. I guarantee you will come home back to Godhead by this process. Thank you very much. So then the next section is Srila Prabhupada answering mail. Devotees are reporting successes in preaching in Europe, as well as on different parts of Europe, as well as Mayapur. So about Europe, Srila Prabhupada says, this is one of our businesses, to expose these rascals who are cheating and who have no spiritual asset. We don't say publicly that they are rascal, otherwise they will condemn us. But by practical action they will see and compare. Simply chant and dance, distribute prasadam, and wherever possible some books. Nobody will be grudged. This is our duty. Yare deko tare kaho Krishna upadesh. Everyone is fed up with this rascal civilization of sex and wine. So how do we know that people are fed up? From the fact that they actually have to lose themselves. They have to lose inhibition. They have to lose common sense. They have to lose judgment. They have to even lose their memory about it to enjoy it. That's how we know that they're fed up of it. If something is enjoyable, you don't need a substance to enjoy it. It means that it's not. That's the bottom line. How long can one artificially live on this? They have no other asset. Therefore, people are turning to Indian culture. Let us push on. Others cannot push on. They have no asset. Then on the update on Mayapur, they were also having wonderful successes. But this time the problem was Prabhupada's godbrothers were resisting the development of Mayapur temple. So Prabhupada says, we're not acquiring the land for sense gratification. It's for Krishna's glory. Nimitta matram bhava savisachin. 1133. Just like Arjuna was asked to fight by Krishna, it was Prabhupada's dream to make Mayapur a transcendental city. So he sent a letter. Sri Prabhupada sent a letter to one of his other godbrothers to actually intercede on ISKCON's behalf, so that the godbrothers who were creating difficulties would back down. So Sri Prabhupada wrote in that letter, they say our mission is political and we want only the downfall of India and political power. They are so envious. As a matter of fact, I'm trying to develop a township in Mayapur, spending crores of rupees to give protection against the occasional inundation, that's the flood, and construct a tall planetarium estimated to be 300 feet high. So they're obstructing this. So why are they obstructing this program? What's the harm to them? People are already coming from all parts of the world to see Mayapur and join in the Sankirtan. So if something more attractive is done, people will come from all parts of the world. So what is their objection, their tangible objection? Of course, they can't do these things. It's beyond their power. But if someone else does it, why should they be envious and obstructive? So what's political about the aims of uniting people in Mayapur, bringing them to glorify Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, right? A place, even if Vrindavan is a little well known, Mayapur was not well known at all until Srila Prabhupada actually started these developments. So it was actually for the ultimate benefit of India. Like the tourism is just from one sense, of course, looking at it, the tourism to that area has boomed so much. What to speak of the developments and things. This is not good for India, not in any way. But obviously underlying all of this was the envy. That's what Srila Prabhupada is mentioning. And this is also going to be a theme that we're going to carry through now, bringing so many people from so many different cultures together, so many different parts of the world, is actually truly uniting the world. And then comes a comment about the United Nations. A letter from Guru Das described what was going on at the United Nations Conference on Human Settlement in Vancouver. So there were many nations represented, 157, and then Srila Prabhupada's disciples put up a display as well. Many about establishing farm communities, in particular simple living and high thinking as a concept, and then about prasadam distribution, which of course social upliftment, and the philosophy coming out in dramas, kirtans, question and answers, a question and answer session, and a book display. And a third section was slides and Krishna conscious movies. He outlined, that is Guru Das, he outlined the 4 points he will speak about at this UN conference. Ishya Vasham Idam Sarvam, that everyone should accept only his quota as provided by God. Otherwise, he should be considered a thief. That's one. A spiritual solution is necessary to the economic problems, not another economic one. And that's two. A God-centered culture is required in general for any problem to be solved. And people should leave the crowded cities and go back to the land for a life of simple living and high thinking, thus creating small Vedic cities like Mayapur, which depend on the produce of the farm and solve the unemployment problem. Guru Das felt that our direct preaching approach would be far more effective than simply showing the sets of blueprints and drawings that the other exhibits have. Guru Das described them as visual indigestion, whereas our exhibit is actually living. And that's the thing about the philosophy that Srila Prabhupada gave us. It's practical. Right? Living is a nice way to describe it. You can translate it into your life, into anyone's life. And as Prabhupada often says, it's scientific. You'll see the benefit. You'll feel the effect immediately. This is what Guru Das had on display at this conference. Then other disciples who sent, we'll return to this point in a little while. Other disciples who sent preaching news, another point about sacrificing one principle for the other. Sridhar Swami and Trivikram Swami were going to preach in Hong Kong when Srila Prabhupada told them that they could go dressed as gentlemen, basically not in devotee attire, because it'll be easier to travel in this part of the world. Right? So Srila Prabhupada was always practical. Where one principle would work, he would allow that another would be, you could say, sacrificed for that. The important thing was that the preaching would happen. Then a gentleman from the Humanist Union in Lucknow, he sent a reply to Srila Prabhupada based on how we could attain, or how to attain unity in human society based on ethical dealings between fellow human beings. But his ideas do not include God. And that's because many people think that God is a factor that divides. And that's a immature understanding. Prabhupada was frank in his reply. Your idea of the unity of man is utopian. It will never become. The United Nations has tried for so many years and they will never agree. If we keep human beings in the status of cats and dogs in the bodily concept of life, how can they live in peace? Because your bodily distinction is a distinction. If you maintain it, you're never going to see yourself the same as anyone else. So where's the prospect of unity? Until you transcend the bodily concept of life, you'll never see anyone else as equal to you. And the only way you can transcend it is by understanding that you are a part and parcel of God. You have to have God at the center of that philosophy. It's not going to work any other way. They will simply fight like cats and dogs amongst one another. However, when the members of human society come to the spiritual platform, and then there's a genuine possibility of unity. Without God consciousness, nobody can be ethical. Then a life member in Lusaka writes about 2 questions. What happens when a heart transplant is done and at that time the heart is taken out, and at times the donor's heart is replaced? Isn't that the recipient loses his original individuality as a different soul is entering in that body along with that live heart of the donor? And it looks like if that gets another's life because his own life-giving heart is already out. No. Whatever he's trying to say, it's not correct. Right? The soul can't be moved with a heart that's being transplanted. Right? It never happens. That body that the heart is being moved from is dead, and that soul has already left. The soul that is in the heart, in the body that is being transplanted into, that soul has been there and will be there until such time that that soul has to leave. And then Prabhupada explained that actually whether someone has a transplant or not, that span of life that they're meant to have in that body is certain. There's no factor that can change it. Right? So this heart transplant, if it meant that the person lived another 4 years or so, Prabhupada says, they would have still lived that 4 years without the heart transplant also. So basically by our material means, we can't prolong anybody's life. The only way, Prabhupada says, is through the yogic process. Through the yogic process, one can prolong life. By stopping the breathing process, keeping in samadhi, the breath period is not misused and he increases the lifespan. Therefore, destiny can only be changed by devotional service or yoga. Otherwise, what you must suffer, and what you must enjoy, you must enjoy. For a devotee, however, whatever he may be, he takes the opportunity to chant Hare Krishna, and if by Krishna's grace destiny is changed, then it is all right. So we may say, okay, devotees also go through these things. Prabhupada does allow that the condition of life may improve with a transplant. So if your physical condition will improve, then you undergo it, even though your lifespan may not increase, so that your services can be facilitated. Right? So that's our rationale for a devotee to undergo that. Then this person asked a question about the moon, discrepancy between what the scientists found on the moon, or what the astronauts found on the moon, and what's in scripture. Prabhupada says, what is the proof that they've gone to the moon? Why are they now not utilizing it, and why are they simply quiet? They have simply squandered so much money, but there's no proof that they went. A foolish man squanders and does nothing, and still we believe that they are scientists. According to the Bhagavad Gita, Yanti Deva Vrita Devan, without the necessary qualification, namely a visa, you can't even go to another country, what to speak of another planet. And the moon planet Chandraloka being a heavenly planet, how can we accept that they've gone to the moon? Our point is that they're accepting foolish men as scientists. So we've discussed this point a few times. It's quite clear. So then at the end, Srila Prabhupada meets a young man. He met many disciples. They created a little garden for him, quite nice on the rooftop. But he also met a young man, a reporter from a newspaper. He started asking questions about what Srila Prabhupada's purpose was, right, in spreading ISKCON. So Srila Prabhupada explained, Krishna consciousness is meant for ending the suffering of the present civilization by educating people on how to trust in God. So this is very interesting because Srila Prabhupada wrote to the President of the United States because the motto of the United States, this is also something we may not know, is, in God we trust. But Prabhupada makes a point, and how can you trust in someone you don't know? And no one knows God, at least no one outside of Krishna consciousness. So Srila Prabhupada says, our purpose is to educate people. We want to educate people, and he wrote to the President of the United States about this, right? That we can educate you about God, and then you can actually trust in him, right, properly. Richard, this is the reporter, asked if Prabhupada had a specific program on how to do that, right? How to educate people about God. And Srila Prabhupada started explaining about how God is the father and this material nature is the mother, right? And that is clear because Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that he is the seed-giving father, and that this material nature just brings forth all beings, all things that come into creation. And this we can observe, right? We can observe practically that everything basically comes from the earth. And Prabhupada explains to this reporter that if there's a mother, there must be a father then. You can see practically that the earth is bringing forth all kinds of living entities and elements and everything basically, but there must be a father. And the problem is that we don't know who's the father. Right? So he says, if there is a mother, there is a child, there must be a father. This is human sense. And animal sense is, I don't care for father. There may be father, may not be. That is animal sense. So do you want to keep the human society in such ignorance, just like cats and dogs? The dogs do not care who is father. This movement wants to give education to the human society. Yes, there is a father. At this present moment, the human society is a child playing in the lap of the mother, that's all. In big, big motor cars, that's all. Without any knowledge of father. But will the human being simply remain satisfied with toys on the lap of the mother? So we are satisfied with the toys and playing on the lap of the mother. Who is your father? Don't know. That means the present civilization is childish civilization, does not care to know the father. So whether the human civilization will remain child or children, they fight among themselves, children, as if speaking to children. My dear children, live peacefully. So for the time being they may be. Again they will fight, they will cry. This is going on. What the United Nations has done. For the last 40 years they're fighting like children or animals. So if you keep them as child or animals, do you think there will be peace? That is not possible. It is the talking of big, big words for peace. That is not possible. It is futile attempt. So back to this UN conference. One of the devotees had returned from Vancouver. He confirmed Srila Prabhupada's words. The UN is having a habitat conference and they are not united. There are discussions and arguments. Sometimes there are walkouts. So many things. They're not able to reach any conclusions. They can't agree with each other. Prabhupada chuckled. How they can? Do you mean to say dogs simply barking they will come to a conclusion? It's not possible. There is no aim. What is the actual aim of life? So this is a very important movement. At least the intelligent class of men, they must understand it thoroughly. And needless to say, Richard was impressed with the interview. Thank you all for your kind attention. Srila Prabhupada ki. Any questions or comments, corrections? Thank you all so much. Hare Krishna.